Hey everybody, it's the first of the month, so you know what that means. It's time for the next episode of Thirds on First.
Welcome, everyone, to Thirds on First. It is Thirds Day, March 1st, and we are delighted to be back with you guys again for another episode of Thirds on First. You are now rocking with the Thirds. This is our second episode of our second season, and we thought for today's episode we would reflect on the fact that we are going on a year. Can you believe it, y'all? We are going on a year of quarantine and surviving and thriving during a pandemic. And it has been quite a year and a year of change. And you may have noticed on our last episode, we've all got these triangle necklaces that the one got for us, and it represents our thirdness, but also the triangle represents a delta, which is a change. And so today we're going to talk about the gifts of the pandemic, and we're going to talk about how the pandemic has changed us. And also, you might also know a certain superhero who's got a triangle on their chest, and that's either Superman or Superwoman. We all think we've gotten some superpowers through the pandemic. And so we're going to reflect on that as well. So we're going to kind of have some fun today. We always find a way to get it a little bit deep, but we're going to have a good time. We're going to rock out. And I'm 2/3, AKA Nicole. I'm here with my sisters. 1/3, Rashida. 3/3, AKA the one, AKA Ashante. And we're going to just dive and jump in. And the first thing I thought we would do, ladies, is actually kind of talk about the metamorphosis that each of us has undergone over the past year. Because I think if you look at our respective lives over the last 12 to 18 months, they have really changed and look really different. Certainly on the surface, because everyone's life looks different, but digging down deep too, we've all been through some transitions. And I thought, to level set for our listeners, it would be great to just talk about what has changed for you in the last 12 to 18 months. And why don't we take it in reverse third order? How about that? We'll start with 3/3. Why don't you tell us, how does your life look different now than it did a year and a half ago?
So my life looks drastically different, and I don't think I can talk about the last year or so without going a little bit further. And I will actually start by saying that I feel like I was having a conversation this week, and we were talking about the pandemic and how you thrived or survived or made it through really has a lot to do with what your positioning was before, pre-pandemic. That, the same storm happened to all of us, but we were not all at the same starting points. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I think even 3 years ago, I started having this feeling like I had begun to settle in and establish myself at a level that was not the level I was supposed to be at, that I had stopped before I'd gotten to the goal. And I was starting to feel, I won't even say discontent, but I was starting to feel a yearning for shaking myself free from that and moving to where I was going, I knew I was supposed to be. And so I started really tackling little pieces, and so making small changes. And I think by February of 2020, I had really hit this point where people talk about like fire shot up in my bones. Like I felt like, oh, nope, something's got to give. I knew that there was a point that I would get to where I felt like it was the breaking point and I was going to change. And I felt like in February of 2020, I found that point. And 1/3 can tell you, I had to like call her one morning to be like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I don't know how I'm supposed to leave this house and act like everything's normal, because it's just not anymore. And what was okay prior to today is not okay anymore. And so I still was not ready to make a huge leap because I did not know exactly what that looked like. And so I think I was sort of standing on the edge of the plane with my, backpack on, being like, okay, if someone pushes me, I'll go. But I was also willing to be pulled back into the plane and to try something different. Once quarantine hit, it was kind of like the wheels fell off. I mean, it became a perfect storm of things that, health issues. Work was much more complex than it had been, just because we were trying to do things remotely, but also, there were additional layers that had to be done because of COVID protocols. And I heard myself in multiple conversations saying, this is squeezing the last bit I have in me, and I don't know how much more I can do it. Unbeknownst to me, I was also having health issues that I didn't realize, and I ended up having to take a medical leave of absence from work, which was a terrifying time for me because of the medical issues I was having. I feel like, folks talk about the dark night of the soul. I was not expecting that to be that moment, but it really was that moment for me. It was a mixture of COVID anxiety from being quarantined combined with these adverse reactions from the medication. And I didn't really know what was up and what was down. And so I knew I did not feel like myself. I did not know what was going on for a long time. And so by the time we figured out what it was, that was a huge relief, but it also took a lot of time to just sort of, convalesce and recover afterwards. And once I came out of that, I felt like I got back to the starting point of where I was in February. And I felt like, okay, but this still is not where I want to be. I still have a huge journey ahead of me. And what I know is that I need to take a beat, and I need to really take this time to, take the pause that I believe the quarantine can present for us, this time to actually reflect. And so in doing so, I took what felt like a very bold risk for me and asked for an extended leave from work. And, was willing to do that without pay because I just felt like I need this time. And, there are a ton of people who are working hard, and, I don't want anything that's not meant for me, but what I really need is this break so that I don't have a breakdown. And in taking that time, I actually felt like I rediscovered so many things about myself. Like I started with, trying to figure out, what do you like right now? Like you've been running the same circuit. You haven't been doing, things that you were passionate about before. So I started doing more art, started reading more, started taking just walks in nature, working out. And, slowly but surely, I really started to feel like myself, and have been able to return to work and do it in a capacity where I feel like my entire life is fuller and richer. So I am bringing more of myself to the table, and I am able to, when I'm at work, be really focused on work. And, when I am not and I'm doing my art, I'm focused on the piece I'm creating right then. When, we're doing podcast prep, I'm focused on that. Like, I feel like it's just helped me to be much more present. And so, while there have definitely been highs and lows for me during the quarantine, I feel like overall it sort of propelled me years ahead of where I would have been otherwise. So
one of the things I love about what you share, but also knowing, the story and more of the details behind it, is that you were willing to say no, and you were willing to say, I need something else, even though what others may have perceived or expected of you were different. But you just kind of were like, this is what I need, and this is where I'm going, and I'm not ready to do this, but I'm ready to do this. And like, I so admire that. Because so often it's easy to just take the path that people expect you to take.
And what a brave kind of superhero moment, right? Because it's easy, but there's a high price to do what people expect you to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to stand up for yourself and to do something unexpected and to take a path less walked by others, because you are claiming your own truth and power and your own needs. So I say kudos as well.
Thank you. And I want to be clear for our listeners, because I think you guys know this. Like, to be clear, it was baby steps. Like, this was not me running full speed, you know, at the speed of light into anything. There were times where I felt like I was blindfolded and God was just saying, I will show you the next 2 steps. If you just take those, you know, and then suddenly, like, I think at the end of last year, I kind of sat down and thought about, you know, because I was feeling like, oh, what have you really done? Like, what can you show for yourself? And I started making a list, and I was like, oh my God, like, this is what your leap would have looked like to you. And you did not have to leap. You just kind of crawled your way there, but you still got to the same destination. So if you're thinking about doing anything big, like, no, just move, just keep going towards the goal. It does not have to be the fastest or the swiftest race. Just keep going there and you will get there.
Right. I spend a lot of time mentoring younger professionals, usually lawyers, about how to proceed. And I say to them, in terms of where I've come in the past 17 years, is literally just make the next right choice. And I laugh when people want to be like, well, where do you want to be in 5 years? Well, I just want to be wherever I'm at. I don't know. Because like, I'm literally only making the next right choice based on whatever's in front of me. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'll take a minute and share my journey over the past year, since we're in reverse third order. So this time last year, I was working myself into a lather in a corporate environment, and it was an extremely challenging environment. It was one where I was sitting in the newly acquired subsidiary, and there was a new parent public company in place. And those situations are always challenging. Any kind of merger integration process is difficult. I have been accused of being rigid before in my life and having ideas about how things ought to be done. And so sometimes that can clash when you are suddenly put in a position where you have an entire organization that essentially owns you and says, no, this is the way we're going to do things. And so I've never been good with bosses in general, and certainly not in this case anyway. And there was just sort of a change in culture and a shift happening, and a lot of the senior executives that I had been working with were exiting, and it was evident that I needed to get out of that situation. And so I was at this time last year, I was sort of navigating that process and trying to make sure. It's sort of funny. Someone senior in my sort of legacy organization said, well, just make sure you don't leave without any money. Make sure they pay you. So put on my little tiny parachute, right, that I was able to negotiate. And as of the 1st of April last year, I jumped out and leapt out. And similarly to you, 3/3, I really didn't have a plan. I just was like, I know this is not working. And I was incredibly stressed out. I was not taking very good care of myself. I was not excelling in, my family life or being a spouse. And so it was like, this has taken over and is not making me a person that I want to be. This is not who I want to be. So, you know, and it just so happened, of course, that as soon as that was coming to an end, the quarantine started, right? And I think folks know I have 2 young girls, and it was an immediate pivot. It's just sort of funny how things work out. I guess one way of looking at it is a sister just can't get a break, right? Because it was an immediate pivot to, well, now I get to be, you know, teacher, hairstylist, like all those things. And in the early days, y'all remember, we were not going anywhere and nobody was coming in, and I was spraying down groceries, and it was crazy. But the other side, you know, the other way to look at it is, well, thank goodness that I stopped working because I had the time, right? Like God got me just in the nick of time out of a crazy environment so I could focus on my kids and focus on taking care of my family during the pandemic. And as fate would have it, not long after the pandemic started, did I enter what would be, you know, basically like an 8-month saga of a very debilitating back issue. I did not know where it came from or how it started. And I have my sort of theories and suspicions, but the long and the short of it is, you know, for a solid 6 months, it was x-rays, MRIs, doctors, you know, medications, physical therapy, acupuncture, chiropractor, inversion table, standing desk, like every modality and anything you can think of to try to get some relief. It was so bad at some point I couldn't work out and I could barely get out of bed in the morning. And whatever the physical cause was, I definitely feel like the sort of the spiritual cause, if you will, was just, I think my body said, so now it's okay? Like, because you've been running for decades, literally, and now it's okay now if I take a break, right? Like my body was like, you've been holding this at bay for a long time and we need a break. And so that was a real aha moment for me over the past year. And I'm really only in the last maybe 8 weeks have gotten to a place where I'm starting to feel like myself again. And so on the professional front over the last year, you know, it was just sort of like, let me just take things as they come. Again, I would be remiss if we didn't all say we are fortunate that we'd gotten to places in our careers where financially we could handle a leap like this, right? Like, it's not like we recognize not everybody can do that, but mine was a leap. I didn't have anything backing me, you know, backing up. And again, just kind of trying to make that next good choice. I volunteered over the summer with a nonprofit, which was incredibly fulfilling and something I wouldn't ordinarily have been able to do in my normal profit-centered kind of work. And then I was invited or asked really to come back and help out the partner that I worked for many, many, many years at my old firm, Sean's firm, and came back and jumped in the saddle and was having a good time. And again, just taking the next step. I will say, you know, here today I sit as a partner in this law firm now. And it was like, I couldn't have planned that. So if you asked me 5 years ago, where do you want to be in 5 years? I wouldn't have said a partner at a law firm. And again, to me, it was a lesson in just, like you said, letting go, taking the step, and having faith. And I think we'll talk a little bit about losing attachment to the outcome, right? I just kind of was like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just taking, you know, I could never have planned this outcome. And sometimes we think when we let go that we're going to end up with something we don't want, but you could actually end up with something really great in the end. So here I am.
I love it.
Yep. What about you, 1/3?
So it's funny because even as I listen to both of you today, I feel like my story is a little bit of a combination. of the two. So it's funny that we went in reverse order. So I'm gonna pull the one and go back a little bit because it's appropriate. So at the beginning of 2019, I was still working for the Fortune 100 company that I worked at. I worked there for 15 years in total. This was my 14th year. And literally, this was in my year-end performance management conversation. I had been in a role that was very much like a dream job, but it was designed for a finite period of time. We didn't know like exactly how long, but I knew that my job was to do what I love to do, to build something, to get it to a sustainable point, and then to hand it off to people that can take it to the next level. And we were approaching that. And so, a few months before that, at the end of 18, we started conversations about what's going to be next. My boss at the time would literally email me job descriptions she had written up, and I'd be like, what is this? And she's like, well, I'm just thinking about your next role. Like, we could make something up. It would be like this. And I'd be like, I don't want to do that. And so we got into my performance management conversation. They send you everything ahead of time. So my thing is like, do the numbers match up? Because this affects my numbers. Like, it affects my bonus. It affects my increase. Like, are the numbers where I expect them to be? We're good. I don't really have a lot of questions here. Like, we're good. And so we start talking about, let's talk about what's next for you and how we develop you. And I had wrestled for my 2 weeks off, so I take 2 weeks off at the end of every year, about what would be next. Like, should I try this? Should I suggest I go into this department? Like, everything was sort of wide open for me. And I took a breath and I looked at her and I said, September will be 15 years. I want to get to 15 years, but I think my time here is done. And when I said it, it was like a weight lifted off, right? Like, all of that back and forth and wrestling of what's next, like, it just all went away. And I had a very specific request about, could we make my last day like the beginning of 2020? I actually said the first Friday in 2020. Like, I wasn't even trying to go that far in 2020. And that was for like financial reasons and stuff. And so she asked if I was sure. I said yes. She ran it up the flagpole. They kept questioning me. Are you sure? Are you being pushed out? No, I'm sure. I'm good. This is my choice. And it got approved. And so I spent the year making sure my team was well prepped. They didn't know until October that I was going to be leaving.
Wow.
I didn't tell them until then, but I made sure that everything that they needed to be able to do, they could do and they could run. By December, actually at the end of October, I had delivered everything that I was supposed to deliver for the entire year, like even the extra. And so I was like, I'm done. And I was still going to work. And then in December, I did a couple wrap-up things and I was kind of done. They have this thing where they like put you on redeployment, which is where you still work, you still are an employee, but you don't have to come in, you can focus on your next thing. And that was for 60 days. That started in January of 2020. And so my brother, who's an executive coach, actually said to me, if you can, he's like, obviously I can't coach you. I was like, yeah, whatever. But if you can, take a week off for every year that you are at the company. Because you don't realize how ingrained you are until you have disconnected from it. I was like, that's doable. I'm not going to wait until my last day in March, though, because I got 60 days where I don't really have to do anything. Here's what I knew. I knew I wasn't going to be looking to work somewhere else for somebody else. I set up a consulting, like an LLC in 2019. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it, but I had a couple of ideas. And so I started my 15 weeks in January. And I did nothing. So for January, I just sort of settled into not going into work and being tied to this like 9 to 5, even though we know it's like 9 to 5, 8 to 10 was really how we were working at the time. And so like I kept my daughter in the after school program, so I wasn't like rushing to try to get her from school and that kind of thing, just to sort of settle into a routine. And then I would like do whatever I felt like doing. I would meet with people, but not all the time. I didn't want to fill up my schedule. You know, it was just kind of this really cool thing. And I found after about a month, like the clarity and creativity in my brain was just like pinging on all cylinders. And I would be driving and get an idea for something, or I would just be like literally taking a shower and I'd be, oh, what about these 800 things, right? Ended up having to get a whiteboard to put up in the house because I'm always like, oh, this idea, this idea, this idea. So that went on. During that time, I had also been talking to a friend of mine, Kelly, about we need to do something for Black entrepreneurs in Richmond. And she and I, and then Melody, sat down on one Sunday for 8 hours and literally whiteboard. We had like 8 whiteboards around us. And we whiteboarded this vision of like how we could support Black business owners and create networking events and create a community and like help them grow their businesses and all of this in 8 hours. By the time we were done, and we took pictures of everything, like we literally had mapped out events and advisory board, what it would all look like, just boom, just like firing on all cylinders, right? And we said, okay, we'll start in October and with networking events, and then we'll work on like this old business support thing in 2021. Cool. And it kind of moved on. March 9th was my last day at my company. And I turned in my computer, my badge, all the things, and I was done. And March 12th was my daughter's last day of in-person school. And our regular listeners know this, but for those that don't, I'm divorced, I'm a single parent. And so it's all on me. And what I'm grateful for is that I was able to shift and pivot. And her school sent home 75 pages of worksheets.
I remember that, the packet.
I looked at it and I said, no, we're not going to sit around doing 75 pages of worksheets. So I figured out like, what does she need to know by the end of the school year? And I started figuring out ways to teach her stuff because I was like, we're not doing that. She was already in literacy tutoring. So I increased her tutoring from 1 day a week to 3 days a week. I was like, I got to do everything. And we figured it out. We created a schedule and a routine. I put it on the whiteboard. We checked off stuff as we went through the day. By the end of the school year, I'm texting her teacher videos of her reading and doing math. And her teacher's like, and I was like, this is what we've been doing for the past 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
And then she had been registered for summer camp every single week, right? Like every single week she had been registered for summer camp and I withdrew her from everything. And so we got to hang out this summer and all the consulting stuff that I thought I would do. Can y'all hear her banging on my door?
I was like, hold on. I told the thirds when we got on that people are working in the basement and there might be some knocking in my house. And now I'm like, somebody else has knocking. It's not this third, it's that third over there.
One who is watching TV downstairs, so I'm not sure. Okay, pick something else, please. Yes. All because Disney wasn't coming on. This is our real life, y'all.
This is real life. This is how it goes.
But I was going to start my consulting business in May. I had clients lined up. They had to delay because it was actually focused on like co-working space design. That kind of went out the window with COVID. And I used the time to spend with her I volunteered with the local chamber on some stuff supporting small businesses, which actually turned into a contract opportunity with another entity that I picked up in July and found a passion around, like program management related to things for small businesses and creating equity and access for small businesses. And so that was like pivot number one. At the same time in the summer, you know, my now business partners we were all getting calls about supporting Black owned businesses because, you know, we had this social consciousness awakening in the country all of a sudden. And we went from we'll launch in 2021 to we're launching in August and soft launch and hard launch in September. And that was the Jackson Ward Creative Collective. I know the name of my business is Square that we created with the mug that the one just drank out of. And we have 175 members and businesses that we are able to support. And we've been able to give out $7,000 in grants, and we are 5 months old. So like, I never would have, and to put it in full context, through the consulting, I oversaw the awarding of $120 million in grants to Virginia small businesses. Through Jackson Ward Collective, we were able to award within our first 3 months $7,000 in grants to Black-owned businesses just in the Richmond area, with a lot more to go. And we are building partnerships and we are getting national coverage. And it has been absolutely amazing and phenomenal. And I have found life's work. I have also found the value of slowing down and being still and enjoying the moments. And I can tell you that my daughter will probably never do a summer full of summer camp. Never again, because I have learned about her and gotten to know her in a way that I never would have been able to. It is a joy she is in in-person school. And so it is a joy to be able to drop her off at school every day and pick her up every day at 1 o'clock and, you know, have some time to hang out. And she understands, like, she's got work to do, mommy's got work to do, and then we hang. I've been teaching her Uno. That's our this year thing. We play Uno every night after dinner. And she's starting to beat me. Like, she's getting good. and she's trash talks, y'all. She'll be like, are you ready? You going down? You scared, mommy? I'm like, excuse me?
Raise them right. Raise them right. That's great.
But like, I never would have been able to do those things. And she's always talking about, so when the germs go away, can I have play date here? And can I have play date here? And I'm like, oh, thanks for that, y'all. Like, I want her to have her interactions, but I also really enjoy this little bubble that we've created because it's a very intimate space that I think is special. So yeah. That's this year. Who knew?
But I mean, really, like, I wanted to do that. I wanted for us to do that because for each of the three of us, again, the world has gone through this collective change, but just such an incredible difference in our lives from a year ago to today. Such change, such transition. And I think woven throughout our stories, I think it's implied, you know, the gifts that the past year has given us. What would you know, we also sort of feel like some of those gifts have revealed to us our superpowers. Would love for you all to reflect a little bit on what you think your superpowers are that you have discovered over the past year. Sean, you want to start us on that?
Sure. One I will say is visibility. You know, oftentimes people would say, I would love to be invisible.
Right.
It's a superpower. Mine, and someone said the other day, it's possible to spread yourself so thin that you become transparent. And I thought, yes, like you had almost become invisible in your pre-pandemic life. And so much of the quarantine, I was pulling myself back together and becoming more powerful in doing that. And so on the power front, I feel like one of the things is I have come to understand the full breadth of my power, and that there is very masculine energy and very feminine energy, and knowing when to access them both, and like in the value in both of them. And I feel like also not trying to, like, being able to settle in and operate from the seat of my soul is a very powerful place for me to be in, and not just feel like I have to try to make something happen. So like you were saying, 2/3, the losing attachment to the outcome has been a very powerful piece for me, because, 1/3 mentioned what her brother told her about, taking the week off for, every year you had been with the company. And she and I had this conversation pre-pandemic, and my thought was like, that sounds amazing, but I can't do, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And I thought about it, I was like, oh no, you took well more than that when you, finally were able to shake free and lose attachment to the outcome. Like, you were able to just make the next right choice and no, like, I need something else right now. Like, my body is crying out for rest. I need to just rest my mind, my body, my soul, and then we will see what comes from there. Because I knew I was in a space where I wasn't making clear decisions. I was making decisions by force. There were so many things I wanted, but I convinced myself I could not have, that I was like, no, you just need to get out of that mindset. You just need to pause it all and then just see what happens as you restart. So really kind of gaining my visibility gave me a stronger voice and a lot more power, so, in general.
And if I would riff on that, we would not that I'm saying I know who you are, but I can say what I've observed, which
Mm-hmm.
is in finding your visibility, you've not only found your voice, but you've been willing to express it authentically.
Mm-hmm.
And to say, this is it. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
This is who I am, what I'm about, and this is what, what I need. And so I would piggyback on that and say, for me, I've always been blunt, and I always, tell it like it is. At least I think I do. But I think I've stepped deeper into my authenticity and my realness, and really embracing that. And I think an interesting thing that has happened in the pandemic is people's masks have come off.
As we've gone on.
They put them on. We also
literally. And so, it's almost like, kind of pausing a minute on the gifts. Like, I feel like it's a gift that people are showing us who they really are, globally and sort of individually. And in doing that, I just truly believe in bringing your authentic self to every situation. And, if you're doing that and you're really checking in your spirit, that, again, it's going to be that much easier to make those right choices, the little choices and the big choices. And so I think that has been, one of the superpowers that I've honed in on during the pandemic. And I also think that, again, with both the family challenges, my kids have been home for a year now, trying to work and do kids and keep a marriage going and strong, having physical limitations that I've had. I just have come to realize I always knew I was strong, but it's like I continue to be strong. And are there moments of weakness? Of course, but it's almost like you can deal with anything that comes your way. You can handle anything that comes your way. It's all going to be all right. And I've had a certain peace about that.
Yeah.
And the kind of stress that I felt a year ago, I don't feel that anymore. I don't feel like the world is crashing around me. And there have been tough times and challenges and all that, but it's like, I'm just steady in my spirit.
Mhm.
And that's kind of like, that's the core that I operate from, and just feeling like I don't have anything to prove to anybody. If you like it, great. If you don't, keep it moving. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think similar, it's funny I think we're all kind of honing on the same thing. I call it clarity of mind, body, and spirit. Because I had already been on this journey of like really taking time to define who I am, what my beliefs are, what my values are, what I care about, what I need. And I have honed in on that even deeper. And so, whether that's mentally, physically, like I finally stopped the whole like following what everybody else does, following all the trends and stuff. And I found the thing that keeps me healthy physically, but also brings me a crap ton of joy and peace in doing it. And even on the days like today where I felt like I was gonna die, but that's okay. But like, that it's funny, my dad was asking me about like my workouts and stuff. And I said, I work out in the morning because it clears my mind and I find that it energizes me. And I never realized that about myself before. And, even spiritually, like filtering through the things that I believe as a Christian and filtering out the things that I was taught, but are not aligned to what I believe as a person as well. And so that process of clarity has brought me a level of peace, like you were just talking about, 2/3, that like, it's just been so valuable for me. And that to me it's a superpower, because then I'm able to say no, which is my other part of my superpower. Like I have a quote on my board. It says, sometimes you need to say no to make room for a hell yes. And it's from Tunde Oyenenyen. I always mess up her last name.
Oh, from Peloton fame?
Yeah.
I like her.
I love her. And so that was from one of the Year of Yes rides. And I wrote that down because I loved it. But yeah, like the power of saying no, even to yourself, is really important, because like sometimes in my brain, I did this last night where I was like, I haven't worked out in 2 days. I should probably like do something real quick. But my body, I knew, was like, you're tired. Right. But my brain was still like, no, you got to do it because you're supposed to do it, and just push through. But I knew I was completely exhausted. It was 8:30 and I was like, is it too early to go to bed yet? So like, I'm learning to say no to other people, but I'm learning to say no to myself, because sometimes you can over push yourself, and that's where you get back to places of exhaustion.
Period. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would say, in addition to no being a superpower, I have found that thank you is a superpower. Like, I have always been a very grateful person, but I feel like the quarantine has been a real exercise in gratitude for me, and deepening that level of gratitude, and just, being thankful for things in advance. And also just always looking for the positive in what is going on, because it can be so easy to say, like, we live in a world of positive and negatives, right? And so it depends on where you're looking as to what's going to, the same way that social media has the algorithm that shows us what we want. Like, I feel like the universe does that too. So when you're constantly looking for things to be grateful for, more things to be grateful for present themselves to you.
Yeah.
If you're looking for negative things, sure, you'll find them because they're there, but and I think we've all
best.
right? I mean, I think we've all talked about things that could have potentially been negative turning positive in our favor. And so, that has been a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. What do you choose to manifest, and in mining that gratitude, which, full disclosure, I am not always the greatest at, let me be clear. And I think, we try to be really transparent here that, we don't always get all, these are sometimes aspirational things, at least for me. But it's like, yeah, the world is kind of on pause. We're all on pause in a way, but life is happening now. The journey is now. Life is now. All you have is now. And so you can sort of get caught in that trap of, okay, well, I got to get this, one last goal taken care of, or I got to do these things. And I have found myself like when I'm a doer. I'm a list maker and I'm a doer, and maybe that resonates with you too and some of y'all out there, but it's like, again, I've said it before, it's like, but you're missing it. Life is not at the end of your to-do list, like you're missing it. And you better wake up and pay attention. And I think that's maybe one of the bigger global gifts of the pandemic is everybody saying, wake up.
Yeah.
Wake up. Your life is happening now.
Don't let it pass you by.
Don't let it pass you by. Shoot, I'm like, I might be on the back nine. I'm 45 now. I mean, I might be on the rolling down. Like it's now. So, unless anybody has any additional thoughts, I think this has been a great episode, ladies. And I'm grateful for you all. Y'all are my gifts. I mean, this podcast itself has been a gift. Came out of the pandemic, and it's a gift to me. It's so much fun to do these with you, and we hope you all out there who take your precious time to listen to us are enjoying this, and we hope it's feeding your soul as well. So be blessed, and happy Thursday. We'll be back with you next month.
Yes.